Everyone called him the Golden Boy. Ethan Blake, valedictorian, debate team captain, Harvard-bound at 17. He was my nephew, or at least that's what I believed. I am Michael Blake. Location: Boston, Massachusetts. My brother, Derek, was a mess from the start. Arrested twice before 30, in and out of rehab, never kept a job for longer than a year. When Ethan was born, Derek's girlfriend disappeared 2 months later. No one ever asked questions. It was just convenient. By the time Ethan turned 3, I filed for guardianship. No fanfare, no fight. Derek was already halfway through a jail sentence for fraud. "Take care of him," he told me once, through plexiglass. "You're better at that stuff than me." I didn't do it for Derek, I did it for Ethan. My wife, Rachel, was surprisingly supportive. She'd only been dating me for a year when Ethan came into the picture. Most women would have run. She didn't. She bought him pajamas, cooked his favorite meals, read him books before bed. By the time he was 8, he called her Aunt Rachel, out of habit, but clung to her like a second mother. We got married when he turned 10, and from the outside, we looked like the perfect picture. One childless couple giving a troubled boy a new chance. I paid for private school, tutors, SAT coaches, therapists. I pushed Ethan like he was my own son. Correction. He was my son in every way but blood. And when that Harvard letter arrived in the spring of his senior year, Rachel cried. I smiled. Ethan hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. "I'll make you proud," he whispered. I thought I had done everything right. Until one evening, just a few weeks before Ethan was set to leave for Cambridge, I came home early. The door was cracked open. Laughter drifted from the living room. Rachel and Ethan were playing chess, something only they did together. I stayed in the hallway, listening. "Mom, if I beat you 3 times in a row, you have to let me take the car." He froze mid-sentence. So did she. A pause, a beat too long. "Sorry," Ethan said, flustered. "I meant Aunt Rachel." Rachel didn't flinch. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't even correct him. She just smiled, like she'd heard it before. I stepped back outside and closed the door. Quietly. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. Something in that smile. It wasn't surprised. It was familiar. I thought I was raising my nephew, but in that moment, for the first time in 20 years, I wondered, was he ever really mine at all? My wife keeps everything neat. Her world is organized in folders, labeled drawers, tidy rows of spices alphabetized in the kitchen. So when she told me she was cleaning out old paperwork, I didn't think much of it until she left the house and forgot to lock the drawer. It was the bottom one in her writing desk, always closed, always off limits. I'd never had a reason to open it until now. Inside were envelopes, photos, receipts going back 20 years, and one small manila folder labeled E.B. 1999-2003. My heart thudded. I opened it. Inside, a birth certificate with Ethan's name, a photo of a newborn, wrapped in blue, and a woman holding him, smiling. That woman was Rachel. The date stamped on the photo, July 1999. I met Rachel in 2002. So why the hell was she holding my nephew at birth? I flipped through the rest. Pediatric records, immunization charts, a nursery bill from a hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. All listed Mother Rachel M. Harper, her maiden name, before she became Rachel Blake. That name had never appeared on any of Ethan's adoption documents. No connection, no acknowledgement, and yet here it was, plain as day. She had given birth to him. I closed the folder. My hands were shaking. I wanted to believe there was some mistake, some other Rachel, some mix-up. So I turned to the only other person who could answer the question I now hated myself for asking. Derek. He was in Walpole Prison, serving his last year of a 12-year sentence for embezzlement. I hadn't visited him in 6. He looked worse, thinner, older, still carrying that smirk of a man who thought the rules were optional. "Wow," he said when he saw me. "Didn't expect you. What's the occasion?" "Ethan," I said, "tell me the truth. What, the kid mess up a class? Steal your credit card? Is Rachel his real mother?" His smile vanished. Dead silence. Then, shit. He leaned back, exhaled. "I told her not to keep it from you, but she said if you knew, it would change everything. And you just let her lie to me. She said she'd raise him better with you than I ever could, and she wasn't wrong, Mike." I stood up. "So all this time, you both watched me raise your kid with my wife, and said nothing?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I walked out of that prison with one truth. Ethan wasn't my nephew. He was the son of my wife and my brother. And I'd paid for every inch of their secret. I didn't want to believe Derek, but I trusted numbers. Cold, objective, unemotional. Which is why, 2 days after our prison conversation, I stood alone in a sterile private diagnostics lab, handing over swabs taken from a coffee mug and a discarded toothbrush. I told the lab tech I was checking for familial connection. 2 male relatives, uncle and nephew. What I didn't say, one of those relatives had been raised like a son, and the other had called him nephew for 20 years while raising him under false pretenses. It took 72 hours. The envelope came with a seal. I waited until Rachel left for yoga, locked myself in my office, and opened it. Paternity index, 99.9987%. Relationship likelihood, biological father, Derek Blake. Relationship likelihood, biological mother, Rachel Blake. The room fell, quiet. Or maybe it was my mind, slamming shut like a trap. Every birthday, every report card, every time Rachel wiped a tear from Ethan's cheek and whispered, "You're stronger than you think." None of it had been innocent. None of it had been built on honesty. She hadn't just cheated on me. She hadn't just lied. She built a life with her ex-lover inside mine. And I paid the mortgage. I sat there for hours, staring at that piece of paper. The irony? Ethan still didn't know. He thought I was the only one who never abandoned him. He didn't realize I was the last person holding up the lie. I should have been angry, but I wasn't. Not yet. I was still calculating, because some truths don't deserve screams. They deserve strategy. So I folded the test result neatly, placed it in a new envelope, and slid it under a false drawer in my desk. Then I poured myself a drink. Neat, no ice, and whispered to the silence, "Okay, you built a life on lies. Let's see how well it survives truth." I raised my wife's secret. I funded her lie. I protected their sin like it was sacred. And now, I would tear it down, one scholarship check at a time. The acceptance letter arrived on a Thursday. Cream-colored envelope, crimson seal. We all knew what it was before we even opened it. Rachel screamed when she saw it. Ethan froze, hands trembling like a child opening a treasure chest. "Congratulations, Mr. Blake," I said, smiling. "Harvard class of 2027. I hugged him. I hugged them. I played my part like it was scripted. Because it was. Because they thought the lie was still safe. Rachel kissed me that night, told me she was proud of how I'd raised such an extraordinary young man. I kissed her back, told her he had her eyes. She didn't catch the weight behind the words. I didn't bring up the DNA test, or the folder in her drawer, or the conversation with Derek. Not yet. Because revenge, real revenge, the kind that lasts, doesn't come in an explosion. It comes in silence. It comes in letting people walk themselves to the edge and then watching them fall. So I began to move, quietly. I called my estate attorney and restructured Ethan's education fund. I made myself sole executor. I rewrote clauses that could cut funding under ethical violations, redirect funds to non-profit shell companies I controlled. From the outside, it still looked generous. From the inside, it became a maze of terms, triggers, and legal landmines. Next, I reached out to an old contact, Alex Rivera, a journalist who owed me a favor. I fed him a tip. A well-known tech philanthropist had unknowingly funded the education of his wife's secret love child. No names. Just enough to get him curious. Just enough to prime the detonation. Meanwhile, Rachel beamed every day. She started planning Ethan's dorm setup, booked a weekend in New York to go furniture shopping with him, sent out a mass email to friends and family. Our boy's going to Harvard. Our boy. It made me sick. Ethan, to his credit, never asked for more than I'd offered. He said thank you. He promised to work hard. He hugged me like a son. And that was the worst part. He didn't betray me. He just existed. Born from two people who had torn something out of me without ever saying a word. So I watched them smile. I paid the deposit and I started counting down. Because the future they built on my back, I was going to tear it down with one click. He got into Harvard. She thought she'd won. But this wasn't her victory. It was the beginning of her sentence. The trick to revenge isn't emotion, it's leverage. And nothing gives a man more power than a paper trail no one else can read. I met with my legal team behind closed doors. No assistants, no interns, just me, 2 seasoned attorneys, and a bottle of bourbon that no one touched. We're creating a private academic trust, I told them, for Ethan Blake. Fully funded, fully revocable. I want ironclad clauses that give me total discretionary control. You want to retain payout authority? My lawyer asked. More than that, I said. I want to own the floor he stands on, so if he ever looks down, he sees my name. By the time the paperwork was finished, Ethan's entire Ivy League dream was running through a funnel I held the valve to. A trust, a stipend, dorm expenses, tuition, travel, all of it under my name. On the surface, it looked like generosity. In reality, it was ownership. I handed Rachel the signed documents over dinner. She looked overwhelmed. You didn't have to do this, she said. He's family, I replied. It's the least I can do. She leaned over, kissed my cheek, and whispered, You're the best thing that's ever happened to us. Us. That word landed like a knife I didn't flinch from anymore. I visited Ethan in his room later that week. He was packing, full of nervous energy. You ready? I asked. Ready as I'll ever be, he smiled. You earned it, I said. Just remember, no matter what happens out there, you always have someone in your corner. You, he said, without hesitation. I nodded, but I didn't say it back. Because I wasn't in his corner anymore. I was sitting in the skybox, watching the ring, waiting. A few days before his move-in date, I made one final change to the trust. A hidden clause. If Ethan's parentage was ever officially confirmed to be different than documented, if DNA, legal records, or family statements proved deception, all funding would be terminated permanently. Then I waited. That weekend, I stood in the driveway as he pulled out for Cambridge. Rachel waved, holding back tears. "He's going to change the world," she whispered. I looked her dead in the eyes. "Yes, and I'm going to make sure the world changes him right back." She didn't catch the meaning. Not yet, but she would. I gave him the keys. I gave her the lie. And now I held the detonator, with her fingerprints all over it. We'd gone to the Cape every August. It was tradition. Lobster rolls, beach walks, quiet nights on the deck. This time felt different. Rachel barely touched her food. She kept fidgeting, eyes flicking to her phone, then the window, then back to me. She was unraveling, beautifully. I let the silence grow heavy, let her twist in it, until finally she said, "Can I tell you something?" I didn't answer, just looked up. She took that as permission. "I've been carrying something for years," she began. "Long before we married, before you took Ethan in." Her voice cracked. "He's mine. I gave birth to him. I never told you, because I was afraid it would ruin everything." I didn't blink. "And Derek?" She nodded. "It was one mistake, one horrible, stupid moment. I was 19. He promised me he'd stay clean. He didn't. I thought if I raised Ethan with you, maybe I could erase it. Erase it, like love was a chalkboard. And so you married me," I said. "I fell in love with you," she insisted. "I swear to God I did. Before or after you used my last name to legitimize your secret child." Her eyes welled up. "Please, I know I should have told you, but I was scared. And then you were so good to him. You gave him everything. I didn't want to lose that." She reached for my hand. "You're still his father, no matter what blood says." I looked at her hand, then at the wine glass beside me, then back at her, and smiled. "Thank you." "For what?" "For confirming everything I needed in your own words." I stood, walked to the mantel, opened a drawer, pulled out a small black recorder, hit stop. "You recorded me," she gasped. "I needed the truth," I said. "And now I have it, on audio, in writing, and in every contract you signed." She stood up, shaking. "Michael, what are you going to do?" I walked past her, poured myself a drink, and said quietly, "You're going to sign this." I slid the divorce papers across the counter. "You'll get nothing, not because of the prenup, but because of fraud. You built this marriage on a lie. And Ethan," she whispered, "he's not my problem anymore." She dropped into a chair, defeated. I watched her for a moment, then added, "I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm doing it because I loved you, deeply, and you turned that into a tool." She confessed, thinking it would save her. But the truth wasn't her shield. It was my sword. It only took 7 days. 7 days for the lawyers to process the confession. 7 days to restructure the will. 7 days to erase 2 decades of carefully staged betrayal. First, Ethan's trust fund, revoked, triggered by Clause 47B, knowingly fraudulent identity in parental declaration. The funds, redirected to a literacy program in rural Appalachia. He'd never see a dollar of it again. Second, Rachel's prenup, activated under Clause 12C, concealment of material biological relations with third parties during marriage. Translation: she'd walk away with nothing. No alimony, no house, not even the car. Third, silence. I didn't say a word to either of them. I let the documents speak, let the legal notices arrive by courier, let the impact come in slow, crashing waves, like a storm you see forming on the horizon but can't stop. Rachel called, dozens of times. I blocked her. She emailed. Please, at least talk to Ethan. He's hurting. He doesn't understand. I didn't reply. Because Ethan wasn't the villain. He was the result. And sometimes the result still has to pay the price. A week later, a faculty dean from Harvard called me. Said there were questions about Ethan's admissions file. Apparently, the anonymous tip I'd fed to the press had made its way back to the university board. A quiet ethics inquiry had been opened. Did you know the boy was your biological nephew, not your son? They asked. No, I said. I was deceived. Would you be willing to provide documentation? I already have, I replied. That was it. The system swallowed the bait. The university suspended Ethan's scholarship pending investigation. He would still be allowed to attend, for now, but the shine was gone. The certainty had cracked. And Rachel? She showed up at the house the next night, banged on the door until her knuckles bled. I watched through the camera, silent. Finally, she collapsed on the front steps, muttering through tears, "You loved us. Why are you doing this?" I didn't answer. I didn't open the door, because there was no us, not anymore. There never had been. I built their future. Now I was dismantling it, clause by clause, breath by breath. They wrote the lie. I just gave it a signature. He showed up just after sunset. No call, no warning, just Ethan, standing on my front porch, wearing the same Harvard hoodie I bought him 2 months ago. Eyes sunken, posture stiff. His backpack slung over one shoulder, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I opened the door and stared at him. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then he broke. "Why?" he asked. "Why what? Why are you doing this to me?" His voice cracked. "Harvard's freezing my scholarship. My trust fund's gone. Mom's losing the house. She won't tell me anything, just cries. You won't answer your phone. It's like you vanished." I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. Because I did. He stepped inside without permission. He always used to. But this time, it felt like trespassing. If this is about Mom, fine. I get it. But why punish me? I didn't do anything. I walked past him, toward the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, gave him one. "You're right," I said. "You didn't do anything." "Then why?" I looked him in the eye. "Because you were the knife." "What?" "I held you in my hands for 20 years, protected you, loved you, believed in you. I thought you were my nephew. I thought I was saving you from the wreckage your father created. And I was grateful I still am. But I wasn't saving Derek's son, I said slowly. I was raising his second betrayal. He froze. His breath caught. What are you saying? I reached into a drawer, pulled out a folder, dropped it on the table. Inside, DNA results, birth records, Rachel's written confession, financial contract amendments. Ethan opened it, scanned, stopped. His face collapsed in real time. She's my mom. And he, Derek, was your father, not just your uncle. No, he whispered. No, this can't. She would have told me. She told me she never would, I replied. He staggered back, the air gone from his lungs. Tears welled. His hands trembled. You think I knew, he said. No. Then why treat me like I did? Because when a bomb goes off, I said, it doesn't matter if the fuse knew it was lit. He slumped into a chair, silent, wrecked. I sat across from him. I don't hate you, Ethan. I hate that you were born of a lie I wasn't allowed to escape. He wiped his face. So what now? Now you go to school. Or don't. Make your own way. But I have nothing. Good. That makes two of us. He stood to leave, but just before walking out, he turned back. You raised me better than this, he said. Whatever Mum and Derek did, you were still the only father I ever had. I said nothing, because part of me wanted to reach out, and the other part still wanted to finish what I started. He wasn't the liar, but he was the legacy of liars, and now he'd pay for the blood that brought him here, even if it still called me Dad. The divorce was swift. Rachel signed everything, didn't contest a thing. She'd lost before she entered the courtroom. The house? Mine. The assets? Frozen from her access. The only thing she took with her was a worn photo album, Ethan's childhood. Pages I no longer cared to open. The headlines came next. Ivy League student loses funding over family fraud. Philanthropist unknowingly raised love. Child of wife and brother. Silent betrayal. The Michael Blake story. I didn't speak to the media. I let the story tell itself. Ethan withdrew from Harvard. I don't know if it was shame, pressure, or just exhaustion. He left a note with a mutual friend. Just one line. Tell him I'm sorry, not for being born, but for not knowing. I didn't answer. Rachel tried once more to speak to me through a lawyer. A letter, handwritten, 3 pages. I read only the first line. I loved you. I just never knew how to love honestly. Then I fed the paper through the shredder. And the house felt bigger now, colder, the kitchen too quiet, the chess set collecting dust. I didn't sleep in the master bedroom anymore. I chose the guest room. Fewer memories there. People called me strong, ruthless, even inspiring, but none of them saw the truth. The kind of revenge I chose, it doesn't end with fire. It ends with ash. And ash can't be rebuilt. One Sunday, I drove to a place I hadn't visited in years. My parents' old cemetery plot. 2 headstones, no flowers. I added a third, recently installed, Derek Blake, 1975-2024. In the end, you were my brother. That was all. I stood in silence. For him. For what we became. For what I let them turn me into. Then I whispered into the wind. I've ended your bloodline. Now I have to live without mine. And for the first time in months, I wept. Not for Rachel, not for Ethan, but for the version of myself who believed family meant something. I won, but the battlefield was empty, and all I could hear in the silence was my own name. The house doesn't echo anymore. I sold it, traded 200 square feet of polished silence for a 2-bedroom apartment overlooking the Charles River. No more marble countertops, no more reminders, just glass, wind, and the occasional sound of rowing crews passing at dawn. One morning, a letter arrived, handwritten, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Ethan. I hesitated before opening it. Part of me expected anger. Part of me hoped for forgiveness. The rest just wanted peace. Dear Michael, I don't know if this will reach you, or if you'll read it, but I needed to try. I'm in Kenya now, working with a rural education group. We build schools. It's not Harvard, but it feels real. Every day I wake up tired, but grateful. I don't hate you. You did what you did out of pain. Maybe I was the face of a betrayal I didn't choose. But I know this. You were the one who raised me. You taught me how to think, how to stand up straight, how to care. I still carry that with me, whether you want me to or not. And even though I know we may never speak again, I wanted to say thank you for everything. Ethan. I read the letter twice, then a third time. Then I sat with it in my lap until the sun moved across the window. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just breathed. I pulled out a pen, wrote one sentence on the back. You weren't my nephew, you weren't my son, but you were mine, and I hope you still are, wherever you go. I folded it, mailed it. No return address, no expectation, just one small truth sent across the world like a quiet apology. Because in the end, revenge doesn't rewrite blood, but maybe it rewrites what's left behind. I spent 20 years building a future for someone who wasn't mine, and in the ashes of that lie, I found the only thing I couldn't destroy. His heart.